For Aslan Media, this is Reza Aslan. It is Wednesday, May 23rd. Well, today is the day that the P5+1 nations will meet in Baghdad with Iran to talk about Iran's emerging nuclear program. This comes a day after the IAEA, that's the nuclear watchdog that is responsible for nuclear proliferation around the world, struck a deal with Iran about getting access to its secret military sites, specifically in Parchin. Now, this was a very big sticking point for the negotiations. What the P5+1 nations want is to make sure that they have access to every single one of Iran's suspected nuclear sites. Now, the reason that this is so important is because, as we all know, there's been this discussion over the last 6 or 7 months about whether negotiations and sanctions, that is, the Obama policy, or military strike, that Benjamin Netanyahu's policy, is the best way to deal with Iran's nuclear program. Of course, over these last few months, Aslan Media has made it very clear where we fall. We think that Netanyahu is incorrect, and it turns out that almost every single Mossad and IDF general, including the head of Shin Bet in Israel, agrees with us and disagrees with Benjamin Netanyahu about the threat from Iran. But there's a larger issue at play here, which is that our entire Iran policy was predicated on this very simple issue, that through targeted sanctions, specifically on Iran's oil infrastructure, its central bank, select individuals that are related to either its nuclear program or the Revolutionary Guards, that through these kinds of sanctions programs, we could get Iran to the negotiating table to talk about its nuclear program, rather than through just simply military attack or even the threat of military attack. Well, what we're seeing is that that particular theory is bearing out quite well. If the whole point of this was to get Iran to the negotiating table, guess what? That's where they are. And it seems as though they are much more willing to talk about the sticky issues involved in negotiations than they have been before. If that's not a win for the Obama policy, then I don't know what is. Now, let's be honest. We've got a long way to go before we can talk about this problem being solved. There's the issue of pure nuclear inspections, whether Iran will sign on again to the additional protocols of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. On the other side, there's the reconciliation between the Israeli perspective, which is that Iran cannot have any nuclear capabilities whatsoever, which is impossible, and the American perspective, which says that Iran can enrich uranium to about 5% as long as it ships the low-enriched uranium out of the country for processing elsewhere, that it can get its 20% enrichment that it needs for medical isotopes from either France or Turkey, etc. There's a lot of talking to go before this is over. But talking is a good thing. It's certainly better than the other possibility, which is a war that could engulf the entire Middle East, that could become a whole new kind of Cold War between Iran, Israel, between China and the United States. So then, this is just the beginning of the process, but it's a good beginning, and we should all be happy for it. Well done, President Obama. And Bibi, I know that you're still very upset about this. You don't want to talk for any reason. You think talking by definition is giving Iran cover to do something that somehow it would not do if we weren't talking. But you're going to have to get used to the new reality. You do not dictate American policy as much as you think you do. For Aslan Media, this is Reza Aslan.